Hello, good evening. Hey, I've been getting ready to introduce a man you might want to all see. Look, you guys heard me say, if you watch me on Fox, you watch me in your speeches, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Throughout my career, I started the board training in 1984. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I ever worked for did something to secure the border. But no president did more than President Trump. When President Trump was president, we had illegal immigration down to 83% at 45 years old. What does that mean? That means less women were getting raped by the cartels, less children were drowning in the river, no suspected terrorists want to throw across the border like they are now. We didn't have 106,000 Americans dying from fentanyl overdoses because President Trump saved lives on the southern border. I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it again. I made a promise to President Trump last year in Las Vegas over dinner. I said, you come back, I come back, we fix this shit. So, ladies and gentlemen, the baddest ass president in this nation, Donald Trump.
I recognize him. Well, it's great to have you at Mar-a-Lago, and you know, Tom is a special man. I think his brother Kevin's here someplace. Where's Kevin? Kevin is here. Hi, Kevin. Way back there. What happened, Kevin? But Kevin is just like his brother. But Tom has been amazing. I don't do these often. I will tell you. I don't let people use the house often. We want to keep it nice and pristine. We don't need crowds like this. This is a big crowd. Oh, I just spotted somebody in there. Carrie Lake. You needed him to watch over the election, I think, a little bit. They had a few voting machines that were broken in Carrie's election. Like they all waited until Tuesday. They got there, and that little problem with the voting machines didn't work. Could you come back in 10 hours, they said, and that was a tough one, wasn't it? Disgraceful what's happening. It's disgraceful what's happening to our country. But when Tom was involved with me, I'll tell you what, and he even said it today, he said, sir, you get back in, we'll have the border taken care of. In 60 days, he said. I believe the real number of people coming in by the end of this year is going to be 15 million people. I believe that's the real number. Wow. That's bigger than New York State. Yeah. And you know, they give these phony numbers out, Tom. You look at the other side and you see thousands and thousands of people wanting to pour in. And I think next week is a big week because you have tens of thousands. You know, I had a Remain in Mexico statute that we had passed, and we got it passed with the Mexican government. And Tom understands, we went to the Mexican government. I said, you have to keep the people in Mexico, no more coming in. They looked at me like, nobody ever said that to us. I said, you have to do that and many other things. You have to give us 28,000 soldiers. It's very important that you give us 20 free of charge. They said, we won't do that. And the person from the State Department who's in charge of Mexico for 25 years said, sir, they'll never give you these things. I said, yes, they will, 100%. He said, they won't do it, sir. I said, yes, they will. I said, give me your top 10 things. And I asked Tom Homan and a couple of people. We asked Brandon Judd, who I think is terrific. I hope I'm speaking properly when I say that. I don't know if he's here or not, but he's a terrific guy, and he's been a friend. And I asked a couple of others, give me a list of your top 10 things. Put them down. I'll get them from Mexico. And even Tom wasn't a total believer in this, but he gave me 10 crazy things that were impossible to do. And they all, we put the 10 toughest, the 10 most important. And I said, here's what we need. But 2 of them, one was Remain in Mexico, so important. Another one was your bill where you have to be reasonably healthy to come in, so you don't infect everybody in our society, right? Which, as you know, is ending very soon. And when it ends, you're going to have tremendous numbers of people. So come pouring in. And that's going to be, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Hundreds of thousands of people coming in, waiting, Remain in Mexico, and a judge upheld it. So the Mexican top person in the whole country came in, right under the president, and I'm sitting there with the head of the State Department and some other big people from our country. And I said, we're gonna have to do a remain in Mexico policy where they say in your country they can't come in. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, he won't do that. He actually smiled and laughed, he thought it was funny. And then I gave him 2 or 3 of other beauties, and then I also said, you have to supply us with 28,000 soldiers, because while we're building the wall, you know, we built 500 miles of wall, and then we were in the process of building another 200 miles, and we had a weak election, so yeah. And then they said, we don't want to build the 200. 3 weeks, they would have had another 200 finished, and they were important, because they were the areas that were leaking, so to speak, and they were important. But I said, no, you have to give us the soldiers, you have to do a remain in Mexico policy. Nobody ever even heard of it. We came up with that name, remain in Mexico, meaning you can't come into our country until you get passed. And they said, no, we won't do that, sir. I think it's so funny that you ask. I said, it's not funny. Here's the story. If you don't do it, on Monday morning, we're putting a 25% tariff on all products, including all the cars that you took away from our country. We're putting a 25% tariff on them. You were there. We're putting a 25% tariff on all products coming in from Mexico, including the thousands, and you know, they took 32% of our car business. They make now 32% of what we used to make, if you can believe it. So we're gonna put a 25% tariff on. He said, you wouldn't do that. I said, well, I'll do it. Here's the papers right here. I'm signing them on Monday morning. This was a Friday. And he said, sir, may I please be excused? I'd like to make a phone call. I know who to call. Who I really like, the president of the country, who I really do like. He's a socialist, but that's okay. He can't have everything. And he comes back in to see me like 10 minutes later. And he said, sir, it would be a great honor to accept your proposal. I got every one of those 10 things down. Every single one of them. I should have made a bet with the State Department first. She was actually good, but she was so used to being told no for 25 years that, you know, she just accepted it. But that's what we did, and we did this stuff together. And I want to tell you, this man is tough, and he's smart. So we replaced the catch and release, detain and deport. We call detain and deport. We said catch and release. You know what that is? You catch them, then you say, hi, how you doing? Then we release them. Shut down asylum fraud. We did that. We negotiated remain in Mexico, the historic Safe Third agreements. You know what that is. We built hundreds of miles of wall. Everybody knows that. We would have built a lot more. Another 3 weeks, we would have another couple of hundred. And our border was never stronger. We never had a border anywhere near as strong as it was just 3 years ago. Now I can say 3 years. It's getting closer and closer to that very important election day. I used to say just 6 months ago, because it happened almost immediately. And now I say 3 years ago. Think of that. Amazing. We've gone through 3 years of hell. Our country has never been downgraded like this. If you took, and I say this often, if you took the first, I would say the 5, maybe even more than that, 6, maybe 6, 7, 10 worst presidents in the history of our country, it wouldn't have done, he wouldn't have done the damage that's been done to our country in the last little while. I mean, you take a look at, you would have never had Ukraine, you would have never had Russia. You wouldn't have had them fighting, and I talked to Putin about it a lot. I've spoken to Kerry about this. We used to talk about that, if you remember. It was so crazy because he wouldn't have ever done it. He understood, couldn't do it. I won't tell you exactly why, but he understood why. And he didn't believe it, but he believed it 10%. That's all you need. Same thing with President Xi of China, with Taiwan. 0 chance he would have gone in. Now it looks like it's just a question of time. He's wanted it a long time. I knew that, but he would have never done it. Would have never, under any circumstances, done it. But you take a look at inflation. That was caused by energy. When the energy went up, the inflation went up, everything went up. Now it's caused by everything, because now everything is gone, so it's through the roof. That would have never taken place. The crime in our cities is worse than it's ever been. Nobody does anything about it. And our country is going to hell. But we're going to have an election which I never thought I'd say it. 2016 was so important, and we did so many things. We rebuilt our military. We have the largest tax cuts in history, the largest regulation cuts in history, the most jobs in history. All of the things, even if you think about it, we did a medical invention, so to speak. You know what that is, right? Where you're allowed to go out and try a medicine that isn't approved if you're ill, if you're very ill, terminally ill. And nobody ever thought it could happen. They've been trying to get it passed for, I think 52 years, something like that. Very complicated because the doctors didn't want it, because they didn't want to be accused of anything. The insurance companies didn't want it, the labs didn't want it, right? Nobody wanted it, and we got it passed. And now people are living all over this country, thousands and thousands of people. They used to go to Asia, they go to Europe looking for a cure.
That's right.
We have the best labs in the world, and we got that taken care of, we got it done. Nobody thought it would be possible. So many things we did, so many things we did.
You are the best president ever. Yeah.
We love Trump. Who's that person? Who said that? They had beautiful voices. Oh, he's a very handsome guy. But that was called Right to Try. Right to Try. And that was so important. And so many lives are saved. And we did so many other things. We're not going to go. But when you think of all of, we rebuilt our military. We created Space Force. Everybody laughed when I said Space Force. Russia and China were killing us in space. And they wanted to have it as a little part of the Air Force, maybe. They didn't even know what they wanted. I said, no, we have to have our own Space Force. It'll turn out to be one of the most important things that we did, I think. It's going to go down. It's already turning out, and it's had a huge impact on our weapons and everything else. But now if you think about it, what have we done? We have no ammunition. Do you know that? We have no ammunition. So we're giving billions and billions to Ukraine. And, you know, you can like it, not like it, you know, lots of different opinions, but we're in for 150 billion so far, and all of Europe, which is the same size as us, or the economy, same size as us if you add it all together, they're in for 15 billion. So we're in for 10 times more than them, and it affects them slightly more than us, wouldn't you say? You know, it's on their border. It's really, you would say, it's their problem.
That's right.
But we've been given so much away that we essentially have very little ammunition. Some people say we have no ammunition. It's very close to that. And now they want us to go to fight for Taiwan, even though we have no ammunition, even though it's 9,500 miles away, and even though they're 71 miles away. I would say that's an advantage. Do we have any generals here that could tell me, would it be better to be 71 miles away or 9,500 miles? So we're 9,500 miles away, and we have no ammunition. Other than that, we're in great shape. This country, we had so much ammunition, we didn't know what to do with it, but now we don't have any. And things will work out. Somehow we get them to work out, but we have to make a change. It's got to be fast. And I'll tell you what, if we don't win this next election, this country is finished.
You're right.
In this country, it's not even the blimp. The blimp is the least of it, but still the blimp, right? But you know, when you look at all of the money that Biden and the Biden family have taken in from China, I guess there's a reason he's not overly aggressive with that. When you think of it, it's a very sad. We have never been in. I don't want to leave you depressed because here we have to and you walk away depressed. I said that was the most depressing weekend. But you know what? We've never, in my opinion, this country has never been in the jeopardy that it's in right now. And a lot of that has to do with the power of the nuclear, the power of weaponry, because I know that power very well. I've resupplied and redone everything, including the nuclear, which I hated to do, actually, because I think everybody should denuclearize, because the power is so massive, so horrible. And this won't be a war where you have army tanks going back and forth shooting each other. This is big stuff. This would be a nuclear third war, and third world war. And we have a man that doesn't have a clue. We have a man that doesn't understand it. We have a man who is in the midst of all of these problems like nobody's ever seen before. He goes to Ireland that doesn't have a news conference. The whole thing is really, we're in great danger. We're in great danger of a third world war. And I can't say we still have a year and a half to go. And by the way, the polls are looking good. The polls are really through the roof, and that's against Biden and against the Republicans. They're looking good. But a year and a half is a long time. It's an eternity in the world of politics, as they say. I do want to say this. Tom is coming with me.
Yes.
I'm going to put him.
Tommy's the
I
best.
introduced him earlier as one badass person. So if there's one badass moments, I want to share one story that you didn't share.
Oh.
We did an operation called Operation Matador up in New York. We arrested almost 500 MS-13 gang members. And me and the president went up there on Air Force One, and on the way back, we had a press conference. I shared with the president in his office, said, well, that's a great operation, but we may have trouble removing these people. He goes, what do you mean? I said, El Salvador don't like to take their people back, especially the criminals. They always give us a hard time. We've had 5 presidents try to do it. He goes, are you serious? I said, yeah. We'd like it done. So, okay, I don't see that's okay. I've heard that from 5 other presidents. Next day he calls me up in my office and says, how many planes can you fill without Southern protection? I said, 8 or 9? Stand by. Within 24 hours, he calls me and says, get those planes in the air, head south.
Love it. Yeah.
No other president I ever worked for was able to accomplish that.
Yeah.
The worst of the worst ever country. I called my staffer and I said, guys, got to throw 8 planes due south. You're kidding. I said, no. They said, this is really happening? I said, President Trump got it done. So again, one badass president.
I should extend a little because it doesn't just happen here, but everybody else. Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala in particular, those 3. And they were sending a lot of rough ones, including MS-13. That's the meanest gang people, these gangs. You think our gangs are tough? Our gangs are like babies compared to these. And, they like cutting people up with knives because it's much more painful than shooting people. And they were coming into our country. When I came in, they were coming in by the thousands, MS-13. And our people told me, and Tom told me, he said, they won't accept people back. So they come in, we put them on a plane, and they'd have airplanes.